Hi there, welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have Morgan Lekstrom, President of NexGold with us. How you doing?
Great. Not even jet lagged.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear. We're almost in the final stretch here, day 2 of SMI, the Swiss Mining Institute conference. And anyways, I've been meaning to sort of catch up with you. I'm a shareholder of Dolly. I'm a shareholder of West Red Lake, and I'm not a shareholder yet of you guys, but I see that you're making moves. Before we get into all of that, what's your background?
Canadian. I have to say that here in Switzerland. My background, I started as a electrical and automation and mine building. So when I was 24, I went over to Freeport in Indonesia at Grasberg, worked for Freeport. Then across over to Togo in Mongolia, number of years there, Africa, Peru, Canada, in and out of different sides of the industry, metallurgical steel. I worked in the grain space for 3 years with a Saudi company, built them a bunch of big $1 billion grain terminals and helped out with their pipelines. So the idea of putting a bunch of mining companies together and running them was one that is near and dear to my heart of someone that's been on a lot of mine builds.
And for those of us that aren't familiar with NexGold, could you give us an overview?
Yeah, so NexGold really only started coming to life in July this year. We did our first merger and completing our second merger now to create Canada's leading nearest term developer of gold projects. 2 projects now that will each produce 100,000 ounces a year when built. Almost final permits, as in Q1, Q2 of 2025 final permits, which is a very rare thing in this industry to get to. So, and 6 million ounces of gold. So you have a fairly significant player in the Canadian space now. Well capitalized, $25 million in the bank. And that's our plan, is to build some gold mines and build a mid-tier real fast.
Where are the projects located?
One is in northwestern Ontario. It's just outside Dryden. That's 3 million ounces of gold. That's called the Goliath project. That has been advanced over many years, about 15 years. And we're lucky that we got it right at the time when they have a federal EA in place. And for people that don't know what that is, that's the big hurdle, getting past the federal government and coming into the provincial government. We're just finalizing permitting there. So that's our one project. And we just acquired a company called Signal Gold. That's 3.1 million ounces in Nova Scotia. Their final permits are actually probably more advanced than Goliath right now. They got a provincial EA in place. And the final permits are coming in the next few months here. So you have another 100+ thousand ounce per year producer. Both have scale potential to get up to 200,000 each. So we said we were going to build a company that could do 200,000 to 400,000 ounces a year, and I planned on doing it in 2 years, and apparently happened in 4 months. So we're pretty happy.
Wow, that's tremendous. Maybe you could go through the cap structures. So post-merger or post-acquisition of Signal, what's the cap structure going to look like?
It's actually enhanced. Most can't say that. So I'm pretty proud of how our cap structure ended up. Between the 3 largest shareholders, there's 30% of the stock. We've added a significant amount of institutional holding. So another 22.5% of the stock is institutional. So 52.5% is held very tight between 3 large shareholders and institutional base. There's another 10% in there that is management, board, tech, a couple other notable shareholders in there. A key part of this post-merger was that when we went to raise the $11.5 million, management and board committed to putting 10% of that in ourselves. So we did. We put $1.2 million into this financing, but just between management and board. And we actually ended up raising 18.5. So we will have 141 million shares out, 2 of Canada's most near-term projects, and $25 million in the bank.
And what's the management team going to look like? What's the resulting management team?
The tough one.
Yeah.
No, so I'm the president currently. Jeremy Wyeth is the CEO. Jeremy is a 35-year mine builder. Jeremy will be actually stepping into the role of chief operating officer. So you have 2 buildable near-term projects. You're going to want to have that person that has built mines all over the world. That's Jeremy's expertise. He's a rock star at it. And we're bringing in a gentleman named Kevin Bullock as CEO. Kevin's another 35-year mine veteran. He sits on the board of B2 Gold. He's sold companies. He's built companies. He's one of the founding members of Kirkland Lake. So he's got quite a good pedigree in this. He was the CEO of Signal Gold. Through that acquisition, we decided that, with the relationships that Kevin has with the First Nations in Nova Scotia, the federal government, to disturb those relationships would be very detrimental to a project. So it made the most amount of sense for Kevin to go into that role, Jeremy to go into the builder role, coordinate the two projects, only build one at a time, key part, and Oren Baranowski will stay on as CFO.
And that you sort of dovetailed in my next question. What sort of timeline will development look like before you'd actually get into production?
Yeah, I mean, in the mining space, to tell you anything happens in 3 years is a lofty goal, but we'll be making a construction decision by Q3. We expect that Goldboro, the Nova Scotia project, will be ahead of Goliath in the permitting phase. So through that, we'll be making a decision which one to go to. Most likely, right now it looks like Goldboro, but they're kind of like, twins vying for their parents' love. They just don't know which one they love more. I think financiers and debt funds and all that kind of stuff, when we go to build it, will be telling us. So we have a possibility to be in construction by the end of 2025, which is very fast.
And any sort of scoping study or PEA that you can talk any economics, what it would cost to develop either of these mines?
Absolutely. So there's a feasibility study on Goldboro that was done in 2021. And remember, 2021 gold was low compared to where it is now.
Yeah.
The study was done at $1,600 gold, and it was a 1-to-1 capex to NPV ratio. So that was it's about just under 300 million to build, and it was just over 300 million NPV at current price. At, let's just hypothetically say, forward-looking statement, that at $2,500 gold, both projects will be $1 billion NPV each. So you have a $2 billion NPV company that's coming out to the market at about $100 million net value. So you'll have feasibility study for Goliath coming out Q1. You'll have an updated feasibility potentially coming out, whether we need to update it or not for financing. That will be coming to Q2, Q3. I'll let Kevin, when he comes in, talk about that more. And then we'll have a significant amount of drilling going on because there's a lot of expansion on both projects.
And so those are a couple of catalysts. Any other catalysts that investors should watch out for over the next 6 months?
First Nations agreements, working diligently. Rachel, who is our VP Sustainability and Community, she's done an amazing job with the First Nations and the local folks in Dryden, Ontario. And then Deidre, who's incoming into our team from Signal, I'd say the First Nations relations in Nova Scotia are exceptional. I met the chief of the area, and I was shocked. Everyone got hugs. There's a lot of support for this project in Nova Scotia as well. So you'll see those agreements coming out. You'll see results from drilling, expansion, resource updates, feasibility studies. If you can imagine where this goes into a project financing. One of the keynotes is that on the Goldboro project, it's royalty free. So we'll be looking at monetizing that in the near future, and that will be a significant amount of capital injection into NexGold on a non-dilutive basis. So you can imagine, as you get close to building, you're going to want a lot of capital. This is another way in the next 6 months where we're going to say, hey, here's enough capital that we don't really need to go back to the equity markets for much. There's some creative ways to do that if you just saw what Orla did.
Yeah. So we're at this conference. What are a couple of takeaways? What are you hoping to accomplish by attending SMI?
It's really getting the NexGold name out there. I mean, you'd mentioned before when we were walking, we were a couple companies that came together and merged another company, and we're moving very fast. That's something that Frank Juster, who's one of our main shareholders, is known for doing. I worked very closely with Frank on this deal, helped put it all together. I was pretty instrumental in doing that. So getting here and talking to our investor base, it was timed well. We had just launched originally. I came in September, did a kind of a European roadshow, and I told everyone on the road that we're going to be looking for an acquisition to get us to 200,000 ounces per year production potential, 5 to 6 million ounces. And that's what we did. So I wanted to come back and say, hey, we did everything we said we're going to do, and we're going to keep executing like that, because that's our mantra. We got a board and a team that can build it, and we've got the right financing people behind it.
What about the macro sort of outlook for gold? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, God. I mean, oh, gold. Yeah. I think from a macro side, you're going to see gold steadily up. I think February to, let's say, May. Depends on what the incoming government does in the US. that will be a key indicator of where gold and how fast it's going to get there. I think you're going to see, no matter what, it's going to trend up. We're going to have some down dips like we've seen recently, but there's too much money in the float right now. BRICS is already saying it's going to hedge partially to gold. China's been buying gold in record numbers. So from a macro side, I don't see it pulling back too far. As we thought, everyone was like, oh, it's going to pull back to $2,300. It stopped at $2,550 and went back up. So, I'd like to say $3,000 to $4,000 in the next year. But I would think that we'll be getting probably higher than that if the US does some funny things.
Sounds good. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I always like to end with, people always say I have the greatest management team in the world and the greatest board in the world. And that's a typical junior mining thing to say. I like to always say that we have the team that can do it. We have the team that has a pedigree, that has a background of building mines, building mining companies, with Jim Gallon's on the board as well. So you have this company that can not only build mines, but has the mines to build in a pipeline. So the next 5 years for this company are very exciting and very value creating.
Great. Well, thanks very much for spending some time with us and giving us an overview on NexGold, and wish you lots of success with the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.